First, let's take the wheel off, 21mm socket, remove all 5 of your lug nuts. And remove your wheel. Let's remove this cotter pin for the axle nut. Pull off this little cap here. And with a 30mm socket, let's remove the axle nut. Next, you want to make sure that it actually pushes through the hub and it's not seized. Mine does push through. As you can see, it moves. If not, you could grab a center punch right here and a hammer and whack it right in the middle. That should break it free from the hub. Let's remove this tie rod. For me, the cotter pin is new, so it'll actually come out. Sometimes, if these are rusted, you actually have to just cut them flush, hammer a socket on there, and take the tie rod out that way. But mine's still good, so remove that. And 18mm socket, take the nut off. If you still have the factory tie rods, it's going to be a 17, not 18. And mine broke free from the knuckle here, but if yours didn't, hammer right on the knuckle right here, and that should pop it off. Remove it. 17mm socket, let's remove the ball joint fasteners here. There's a bolt right here, and then 2 nuts. They're all 17mm in size. Perfect. Now this is separated. With my pry bar, I'm going to pry it down on this control arm, and the ball joint pops right out. That's perfect. Just push it to the side here so that when the control arm comes up, it doesn't go right back into the studs. At this point, we can pull the knuckle outwards, pull the axle out, and the reason I'm doing this is just so that I can get to this nut here. So pull the axle out like this. Just watch out for your ABS wire here, and the ball joint, the knuckle can go back in wherever it wants to sit. Make sure your axle doesn't get damaged in any way. And now let's get a socket onto this nut and remove it. Let's remove this cotter pin here. For me, it's not going to come out. It's pretty rusted, so I'm just going to cut it flush. There you go. As flush as you can get it. And then I'm just going to hammer a socket on here, a 19mm socket, and remove the nut over the cotter pin. Now the socket that I'm trying to use is, and most sockets are probably not going to fit on here just because this ring that goes around the axle is in the way. So what I'm going to do is actually just cut a little slice in it right here just so I can fit my socket down in. Be careful as you're doing this, of course. You don't want to damage anything else. I'm just going to heat it up just a little bit because it's kind of stuck, as you saw. All right, now that it's heated, let's try to blast it off again. Finally, there it is. Now get your pickle fork and just hammer it right out of here. There it goes. Let's get this ball joint back into position here and put the nut back on. Let's snug it up and torque it to 90 foot-pounds. Now that it's lined up with the cotter pin hole, put the cotter pin through and bend it over. Make sure that you get it out of the way of the axle. You don't want it to interfere with anything. So make sure it's bent over all the way, and obviously this is also going to lock it in fully. I like to usually put some anti-seize on the splines of the axle. There already is some, but I'll add a little bit more. This will help the axle not stick inside of the hub in the future. Now grab your axle, slide it in to the hub. You can twist it if it doesn't line up. There we go. Now it's pushing through. Let's bring this ball joint to the side. Hold down on the control arm. Line up the ball joint the best you can. Push the knuckle in. Push the axle through all the way. Bring the knuckle in. Line up the ball joint studs with the control arm and press it in all the way. Let's get the mounting bolts on. Let's put on the 2 supplied nuts. These are now 19mm nuts. And I'm going to snug these up before I put the bolt in. That usually helps it line up a little bit better. Okay, that pulled the ball joint tight up against the control arm. Now you can line up the bolt. All right, with this bolt in, might take a little bit to line it up, but let's snug them all down. There's the bolt, which is an 18 millimeter now, and the nuts are a 19. Let's torque them all to 94 foot-pounds. Doesn't matter which one you do first. I'm going to start with the nuts. And now the bolt, which again is the 18 millimeter one. Also the same torque. Perfect. Let's get the tie rod back onto the knuckle, press it down, put on your castle nut. Let's snug it up and then torque it to 36 foot-pounds. All right, make sure your cotter pin hole lines up with the slot in the castle nut, which this does. If not, you always want to keep tightening to line it up and not loosen. Next, put your cotter pin in and kind of bend it out of the way. That way it's nice and locked in. There you go. Let's put the axle nut back on, snug it up, torque it to 217 foot-pounds. Perfect. Put on this little cap that basically locks in your castle nut or your nut. And you have to line up the slots here with the hole for the cotter pin, and then reinstall the cotter pin and just bend it over. That way it's locked in with this. Let's get the wheel back on. It on all the way. Start on all 5 of your lug nuts. Bottom them out. Okay, let's torque them. 76 foot-pounds. Perfect.